see you guys in the dark.
This started back in 2015, maybe 2016-ish. I try to blur most of his identity from my memory. During this time, a good friend of mine was working for a local chain restaurant, and one afternoon she invited me and another friend to come by for a St. Patty's Day drink after our shift at work. When we arrived, all fun and dandy, she got a couple of drinks, and everyone there was nice and respectful. Next thing I know, she comes over and points to a group of guys at the bar that were around my age, saying that they really want to say hi, so they asked me to come over. Let's just say this would have been my first red flag. But I was young and loved meeting new people, and thought, hey, these guys look innocent enough. Fast forward a few months later, and me and my friends were now really close with this group of 3 guys. Alec, the sweet one, James, the weird one, and Dan, the main story. We spent a ton of time together, always laughing and nothing awkward. These guys felt like brothers. A few weeks later, this Dan decided to profess his affection for me via Facebook Messenger. After politely telling me that I saw him more as a brother rather than a lover, he then decided to threaten me by saying he would, and I quote, "kill myself if you don't date me." Safe to say that I decided it was best to take some space from this whole group. After a few weeks of ignoring messages and asking for space, I finally caved and decided to talk it out, hoping things would maybe be normal again. Boy, was I mistaken. Alec and James slowly backed off and appreciated my space. To this day, I respect them for doing this while still being friends with Dan. On the other side of things, Dan continued to message me, telling me he missed me and that I was like a sister to him. The messages became more persistent than ever after multiple back and forths, asking him to leave me alone. He still refused to acknowledge that I no longer wanted contact. It got back to the extent that I had to block him on everything so that I wouldn't receive texts, Insta DMs, and messages on all platforms. Then he took it to the next level. Dan decided to change his phone number. Not once, not twice, 4 times. All so that he could message me. I couldn't believe the extent that he would go just to get me back as a friend, even after multiple threats that I would call the cops. On top of changing phone numbers, he would create new Facebook and Instagram pages, changing his name, using fake images or old ones. I have at least 2 to 5 profiles blocked on my Insta and Facebook. Finally, I thought it was over, until I received a message from my 2 friends Megan and Ashley, along with calls from both of my sisters. Hey, so is Dan trying to add me on Insta? My middle sister, Beth, even got messages saying, "Hey, why won't Gina talk to me?" Along with multiples of the same messages to all of them. I was fucking fuming. It's one thing to harass me, but now, my family? Now I'm bringing it to my parents, who are not only scared for me, but scared he will show up at the house. He knew where I lived at the time. 2 years of this went by before I decided to do something. Now I know people may think, why did you wait so long? But it was really hard for me, and because I blocked and deleted so many messages, I didn't feel like I had the evidence to go to the police and file for harassment, as much as I wanted to. In early 2016, I noticed a profile. It was old pics of Dan, and all of his Facebook friends were youngish girls. I took a video of it and sent it to my sister to warn them in case he tried to contact them. In 2016, I met my current boyfriend, Harrison, my best friend and #1 fan. Luckily, during this, Dan only tried to add me on Insta once. I then deleted and never heard from him again. I assumed at this point he found a girl or realized he needed help. In October of 2018, everything changed. A new guy started at my job who looked exactly like this guy. This was super triggering, so I texted Harrison right away so he could help me calm down. Not even 2 minutes later, he goes, "Have you Googled Dan recently?" Which of course I haven't, so of course I did. My jaw dropped. Dan pleaded guilty last year to incitement of a minor. I started shaking. I couldn't believe my eyes. I had to look up 5+ articles to believe it. I couldn't process whether I was feeling guilty for not seeing this sooner or if I felt relief. I called my mom and cried. I couldn't process this. I spent so much of my life being mentally harassed by someone, and for some reason blamed myself for this happening. I saw this page. I filmed it. I could have done something. I could have prevented this. Dan sentenced to 11 years in federal prison. This is my letter to him. Dear Dan, how could you? How could you hurt so many people? This girl, her family, your family. I'm still in shock, and I'm mad. You've done so much damage to so many good people. You've scarred families, friends, co-workers. For what? You are lonely. I hope you enjoy being lonely forever. Enjoy the cold walls of your cell. They match your heart. I wish I could see you one more time. I want to look you in the fucking eyes. I want an answer. Why? Why did you make me feel so scared? Why did you make this little girl believe you? Why? When I was in 6th grade, I met R. He bullied me relentlessly. He would punch me, verbally abuse me, all 9 yards. But somehow, I became friends with him. I have no idea how. After he stopped bullying me, nothing bad really happened till I reached the 7th grade. I made a new friend named Leslie. We're still friends to this day, and I love her to death. Anyways, R and Leslie and I all were in the same friend group as each other on the bus, since we all lived in the same neighborhood. R started to exhibit some really weird behaviors. On the bus, he would take a pencil, lead to his skin, and cut himself, or attempt to at least. At this point in time, I myself was struggling with self-harm and suicidal behavior, so this pissed me off. I told him off, and he told me it was the demons that made him do it. Weird, I know. This was also when Pokemon Go was really popular, and on more than one occasion I'd be outside my house, because I liked to make musical outside. And his car would pull up in front of my house, stay there for about 10 minutes, and then drive away. Every time I would confront R about it, he would say, "Oh, we were just hunting Pokemon." Yeah, right, dude. He started to date my friend N. He would force her to kiss him when she wasn't comfortable with it. It was constantly taking advantage of her mental state, since she had autism. They broke up eventually. In 8th grade, my homeroom teacher hands me a note. He says some kid gave it to him, and it had my name on it, so I open it and read it. It basically said, "OP, I'm in love with you. I would kill for you. I would shoot and stab everyone for you. If you don't like me back, I'm going to end myself." Along those lines. And I freaked out. Up until that point, I had a crush on him. I didn't anymore. I went to the counselor, I can't remember her name, and gave her the note. He wasn't there for a week, and came back acting as if nothing happened. This is where it gets juicy. Fast forward to 9th grade, aka last year in 2017, in October. He got on the bus, and I moved out of the way so he could sit down since we sat together. He turned to me and said, which I remember word for word, "Last night I had a dream about you, OP. I dreamt I was stabbing you in your back, your blood on my hands, and you dying in my arms." I freaked out and laughed it off, thinking he was just joking. He wasn't. He turned to a page in his book, and it was a drawing of him stabbing me, down to my scarred facial expression and everything. I freaked out and told the counselor, Miss S. She immediately told me to write a statement, so I did. I went home and my mom got a call from Mr. B, who told her what had happened. They wanted her in the school the next day for a meeting. This is where it gets fuzzy for me, since my brain tried to block this all out, since this was a traumatic moment for me. I told the administration, my mom, Miss S, and Miss R what had happened. They told me that they would take care of it. So I went along the school day and went home. He still rode my bus. So I started to sit way in the back because I was terrified of him and scared that he would hurt me. I suffer from PTSD, from abuse and a shooting I was in as a child, paranoia, suicidal thoughts, and self-harm behavior. My mental state deteriorated. I started to self-harm again, and I had to be admitted to a hospital in January of 2018. He was also admitted to the same hospital, different times apart. He was still on my bus 3 months later after the incident. My mom was furious. She's a mama bear, and took me down to school early. This was the following conversation between Mom, Mr. B, and Mr. G. I didn't say much. Mom, why is R still on OP's bus? Mr. B told her, because we don't see any reason to take him off her bus. My mom, he threatened to kill her. That's not a reason in itself. Keep in mind, R admitted to threatening me and showed them the drawing. Mr. G, we don't see him as a threat. This is heavily important later. Mom, so he threatened to kill someone. No disciplinary action happened, and he has to stay on his victim's bus. She turned to me. It's like we're in the Twilight Zone. Yes, she actually said that. Mr. G sighs. Ma'am, there's nothing that we can do. He's legally supposed to ride that particular bus. Mom, OP is a sitting duck on that bus if he chooses to bring a weapon. Mr. G sighs. Well, what can we do? The following week, with my mom harassing them daily, he was finally off my bus. A few weeks later, R reported to them we were not allowed to go near each other, that I was purposely walking towards him and sitting at the same table as him. So I was called into a meeting with my mom, both counselors, and the administration. This is just a rundown, Mrs. S. We brought this guy in here today because R was reported that OP purposely has been sitting at the same breakfast table as him and walking near him. I said, no, I sat at that table because that's where I've sat since September, and that's where my friends are. I walk near him so I can get to class on time without being tardy. Mrs. R. Well, it's empowering as a woman to avoid your abuser and walk a different route to sit at a different table. This pissed me off to no extent, and it still does. I don't remember anything after that because I broke down crying. I shut down completely and pulled my head into my lap. I do remember my mom yelling at the counselors and administrators because of this. I never saw R again after that. Fast forward to this year, 2018, I'm a 10th grader now. In October, I get the news from a mutual friend of ours that he was stalking her and threatened to shoot up the school, and was now in jail. Remember how I said that Mr. G said he wasn't a threat? It's now March, and he's expelled and is on probation. He still lives in my neighborhood, but if I ever need to, or if he talks to me again, I will not hesitate to get a restraining order and press charges. R, let's not meet ever again. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos, and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.